All right, guys, this is the Chapter 2 test review. We're going to go over this. And the first thing I would encourage you guys to do on the review and also the test is to draw these three trig function sine rule graphs. If you don't know how to draw those, like if you don't know where I'm getting these positive and negative signs, you need to raise your hand. You need to ask me. That's something you don't really have to memorize this at all. As long as you know the sine, cosine, tangent formulas, you should be able to come up with these sine rule graphs fairly naturally. But if you have trouble coming up with those, let me know. Because once you have those drawn, it's going to make a lot of these other questions easier, particularly these first few. These first few say, figure out which quadrants cosine and tangent have the same sign. So I'm going to look at the cosine graph, and just remember cosine and secant, they're going to have the same graph since they're reciprocals of one another. So cosine and tangent have the same graph. So cosine is positive in the first quadrant, so is the tangent. So they have the same sign in quadrant number 1. Then we look at quadrant number 2. Cosine is negative in quadrant 2, so is tangent. So they have the same sign in quadrant number 2 as well. And then we look at quadrant number 3. Quadrant number 3, cosine is negative, tangent is positive, so that's not the same sign. And finally, quadrant 4, cosine is positive, cotangent is negative, so that's obviously not the same sign. So it's just quadrant 1 and 2. And remember, we count those quadrants counterclockwise. So this is quadrant 1, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, quadrant 4. All right, next question, sine and cosine have the same sign. So once again, we start in quadrant number 1. Cosine is positive. Sine is also positive in quadrant 1. We look at quadrant number 2. Cosine is negative. Sine is positive. So obviously that's not the same sign. Quadrant number 3, we see that cosine is negative, and so is sine. So they have the same sign in quadrant number 3. That was quadrant 3, they have the same sign. And then finally, quadrant number 4, cosine is positive, sine is negative, so that's not the same sign. And then there's your answer for number 3. Quadrant 2, where cosine is negative and sine is positive, where both things happen. That's the only quadrant where both of those things happen. As always, if you have any questions over any of these problems that the video did not address, please let me know. If you need to pause or rewind, let me know as well. All right, moving forward, they want us to find all 6 trig functions of an angle if given the coordinates of the terminal side of the angle. It doesn't say sketch a graph, so you do not have to sketch a graph. For some people, that's helpful. But they give us the x coordinate is -3. They give us the y coordinate is +4. We just need to come up with the radius. And that's essentially just the Pythagorean theorem, or you can use this formula, r equals the square root of x squared plus y squared, which is a shortcut of the Pythagorean theorem. But once we come up with r, these questions should be pretty simple if you know those 6 formulas. Really only need to memorize 3, and then just the reciprocal of the sine, cosine, and tangent. You have to know those. If you don't know those, you have no chance on this test. So make sure you get those memorized before our test day. So there's the work to find r. Just inserted -3 for x, +4 for y. That might be one you've memorized. It's just a 3, 4, 5 right triangle. So again, now that we know those 3 values for x, y, and r, we should be able to find these 6 trig functions really quickly. Sine is y over r, so it's 4/5. A lot of you on the quiz have noticed have gotten sine and cosine mixed up. So if that's you, if you're making that mistake, you've got to get that corrected, or I mean, you're going to miss most of the questions on this test. Cosine is x over r, tangent is y over x. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. Don't count on the test of cosecant being right next to sine to help you memorize that. cosecant sine. It could be mixed up on the test, so you just need to know that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So it's just 5/4, or in other words, it's r over y. Secant is r over x. And cotangent is x over y. So there's your 6 trig functions for number 4. Go and try number 5. If you want to pause this video, I'm going to skip through the work, but number 5, 6, and 7 really are all identical to number 4. So pause this video now if you want to work out 5 and then check your answer. So really that's the only, I guess, algebra, the math on this problem is to find r. R should have equaled 13. So there are your answers for number 5. Pretty simple, especially when you don't have any radicals for x, y, or r. I think on 6 and 7 that won't be the case. So I'm going to move on to 6 and 7. Pause it if you need to. Go and try number 6. I'll work out 6 again here in just a minute. If you want to pause it and work out and then check in a moment, do that now. So the square root of 13 is what I got for r. You do not want a decimal answer, so just leave that as radical 13. So now we should be able to find those 6 trig functions now that we know what x, y, and r are going to be. So just to work out this first one you're with you, sine is going to be 3 over radical 13 because it's y over r. You cannot have a radical at the bottom of a fraction. There will be points taken off for that. So you're going to repeat this pattern a lot for these questions. You're going to multiply the bottom by itself, and wherever you multiply the bottom by, you have to multiply the top. So we end up getting 3 radical 13 at the top. Radical 13 times radical 13. The radicals just cancel, and that's our answer for sine. Nothing else simplifies because 3 and 13, 3 over 13 is not a fraction that can be reduced. If it could be reduced, we go a little bit further. But that's your answer for sine. What I would encourage you to do for cosecant, or cosecant's just the reciprocal of sine, or in other words, it's the radius, the r, which is the square root of 13 over the y. So radical 13 over 3. All we did was flip the original fraction that we had rather than flip this final answer. If you flip the final answer, then you've got to do a little bit more of simplifying. So go and check those last 4, pause it, and I'll give you those answers here in just a second. So there are your answers for number 6. Here in just a moment, I will unveil the answers for 7. So if you want to pause it now, work out number 7, go ahead and do it. As always, if you have questions, let me know. Should get 5 for r here. It's no different until you get a 0 involved. I've actually graphed that point 0,5 in the coordinate plane right here, just to show you if you graph that point, it actually makes a 90-degree angle if the angle's in standard form there. So there's kind of get some different answers when you have a 90-degree angle. Sine of theta is y over r, which is just 5 over 5. Do not leave your answers 5 over 5. 5 over 5 reduces to 1. So that's the sine of theta. The reciprocal of 5 over 5 is just still 5 over 5. So 1 is our answer for cosecant. Cosine is x over r. 0 divided by 5 is 0. Type it in your calculator if you don't know. Don't be embarrassed to type it in if you don't know. The secant is the reciprocal. It's r over x. 5 divided by 0, that's undefined. You cannot divide anything by 0. The secant is undefined here. It's not 0. Tangent is y over x, which is 5 divided by 0, which is also undefined. And cotangent is x over y. 0 divided by 5 is 0. So moving on to the next page. Again, it's helpful to have these sine rule graphs in front of you to answer this question. So we want to find the exact value of all 6 functions if one is given. So that means we need to, again, know what x equals, we need to know what y equals, we need to know what r equals. Secant is just the reciprocal of cosine. Secant is r over x. So that means we know that r is always positive, so r equals 5, and x has to be the -3. So once you get that drawn, it's really a lot like the last problem, except this time instead of finding r, we're going to use that formula to find the y variable. So the radius is equal to, again, it's just the Pythagorean theorem. It's equal to -3 squared plus y squared. There's not a whole lot of room here to show your work, but to solve this next, you're going to square both sides. I'll scroll down so I can kind of do my work just a little bit below it. 5 squared is 25. Here we get 9 plus y squared, because -3 squared is 9. Subtract 9 from both sides. Y squared equals 16. After you subtract 9 from both sides, so that means, of course, y equals 4. So again, a 3, 4, 5 right triangle. It actually can equal, kind of jump the gun here, y could equal 4 or -4. There's 2 numbers. When you square it, you get +16. So this is where you have to use the clue they give you. They tell us the angle is in quadrant number 2. So if you look in quadrant number 2, right here, y is always positive in quadrant 2. So that's why it has to be a +4. So now that you have those 3 variables, you should be able to find these 6 trig functions pretty quickly. So those are your answers to number 8. Go and try number 9 now. I'm going to pause it, show you the answer here in just a second. So number 9, we know that y equals 24 and x equals 7, because the tangent trig function is y divided by x. So we just need to find the radius, or r. So I don't have the work here to show it, but if you substitute those 2 numbers in for x and y, you should get 25 for r. If you do not see how I'm getting that, let me know. And now that you know those 3 values, you should be able to get the rest of these answers. And again, sorry, I skipped this part again. The radius is a +25, because the clue they give us is we are in quadrant number 1, and tangent is positive in quadrant number 1. Well, actually, it doesn't even really matter, because r is always going to be a positive number. R is always going to be +25. All right, so there are your answers for number 9. You can pause if you need to, if I'm moving too fast, or if you want to just double check how maybe you missed one of the answers. All right, moving on to number 10. Number 10 is cosecant. Cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So cosecant is r over y. So that means we know r is always positive, so r has to be positive 13. Y has to be the negative value, -12. And x, let's just decide right now whether x is going to be positive or negative. If you look in quadrant number 3, x is always going to be negative in quadrant number 3. So we're going to get a negative answer for whatever we get for x when we use the formula we've been using. So pause it and we'll do the work here real quick so you can check. Should ultimately get x to equal -5. From down there, and the purple is subtract 144 from both sides, and we get x squared equals 25. The square root of 25 is 5. Of course, it's a -5 since we're in quadrant number 3. So you get those three values. You go to find those 6 trig functions really easily at this point. Just one thing to look out for on this problem that I've been seeing on the quizzes. The tangent is y over x. So it was a -12 over a -5. And a -5 by a negative, of course, because it's a positive. So tangent and cotangent, to get full credit, you need to not have the negatives in the answers at all, because the negatives just cancel out. So there's your answers for 1 through 10. All right, moving on to number 11. We're going to find the measure of the reference angle for each given angle. I'll work out a couple of these and then pause it and then let you work some out and then just check the answers here in a little bit. So give the reference angle first for 140. So if it's helpful, draw a picture. 140 is going to be in the second quadrant. So altogether, that's 140. This piece is 90, and this piece would be 50. 90 plus 50 gives us the 140. It's positive 140, so that's why we went counterclockwise. Remember, the reference angle is the angle that's formed by the x-axis, and it has to be less than 90 degrees. So that's this angle right here, and that angle would have to be 40 degrees, because 50 plus 40 gives us 90. Another way you could have come up with that, you could have just subtracted 140, the angle given, from 180 to get that answer. That won't work on every single problem, but it'll work on every single angle that falls in quadrant number 2. All right, number 12, 205. Again, if it's helpful, draw the angle. That's going to be in quadrant number 3. That's 90. That's 180. 205 is going to be somewhere right about there. So that's 90. That's 90. This would be 45. No, 25. So 90 plus 90 plus 25 gives you 205. So again, our answer is the angle that's less than 90 degrees that's formed by the x-axis. So this time the reference angle is just this angle right here. So it's 25 degrees. So pause it. I'm going to work out 13 and let you check. And then I'm going to work out 14 and let you check. So pause if you want to work out a couple of these on your own first. So here's 13. 13, they give you a 355-degree angle, which is almost a full circle. 360 is a full circle. So the reference angle that's formed by the x-axis would be this angle right here, because it's less than 90 and it's formed with the x-axis. So that's where we got 5 degrees. We just did 360 minus 355. And then for number 14, they said graph -58, which is of course a clockwise rotation. So -58 is graphed as shown. So the reference angle is the angle less than 90 that's formed by the x-axis. So that's this angle right here. The reference angle is always going to be positive. So that's where we got positive 58. No matter what, the reference angle is going to be a positive number. 15 through 18, you need to change those to degrees first. Once you change them to degrees, then you should be able to answer them just like you did 11 through 14. So I'm going to pause, give you a little bit of time to practice those. Check back in a second. So number 15, it comes out to be about a 102.9 degree angle. I don't think this problem says to round to anything in particular. It doesn't. So if you round to 103, that's fine. But 102.9 is in quadrant number 2. So to get that answer, you could just take 180 minus 102.9, and that's where the 77.1 came from. Number 16 is the 252 degree angle once you convert it to degrees, since that's in quadrant number 3. Again, you could graph this to take a look at it, or you could just take 252 and subtract 180. That would give you 72 degrees. Again, if you can't use these shortcuts, if you're a visual person, draw a picture. Number 17, 306. 306 is in quadrant number 4. So I'm just going to take 360 and subtract 306. Number 18, negative 292.5. So that's actually in quadrant number 1. Let's just draw this one real quick. Negative 292.5, so that's going clockwise. So that's going to reach to about this point right here. The reference angle is going to be this angle right here, because that's the angle that's formed with the x-axis. So we just need to take 360 and subtract 292.5 to get that missing piece right there. Which is going to be, I'll mess this up, 67.5 degrees. Has to be positive, 67.5 degrees. Got any questions on reference angles? Let me know, because those are going to play an important factor on the last set of problems we're going to do here in just a few minutes. All right, moving on to the next page. Finding the exact value of all 6 functions for each angle. And I mean, the test will look just like this. So it'll have 6 questions to find all 6 functions for each angle. So this is where you need to be able to first be able to find the reference angle. So number 19. I'm going to draw number 19. I guess we can fit it in right here. 210 degrees. So that's going to be in quadrant number 3. So this is the reference angle. Since we're in quadrant number 3, it's formed with the x-axis. So we take 210, subtract 180 to get this angle right here. It's 30 degrees. We got a 30, we got a 60, and we got a 90. So you have to know your patterns. 1, radical 3, 2. Or 30, 60, 90, try. Make sure you get the signs. Most of you are getting the numbers in the right place, but you're messing up the sides. So the side opposite the 30-degree angle is going to be a -1, since that's the vertical coordinate, that's the y coordinate, and y is negative in quadrant 3. Same can be said about x. Radical 3 is opposite the 60-degree angle. So this would be a negative radical 3. And the radius is always positive, so it's 2. What I would encourage you to do before you answer these questions, make this so much easier if you list what x, y, and r are equal to in this problem. Your x coordinate is your horizontal coordinates. It's negative radical 3. Your y coordinate is -1, and your radius is 2. If you do that first, these 6 trig functions will go so much faster. You just have to keep looking back at the graph. It's more likely you're going to make a little mistake. So now you know those 3 things. Go ahead and come up with the 6 trig functions. I'll let you check the answers here in just a few seconds if you want to pause it. So there are your completely simplified answers. Make sure you got all the signs right and you've simplified all your fractions. If you've got a negative divided by negative, you need to change those both to positive signs. If you got any questions on how we got any of those simplified, let me know. All right, moving on to number 20. So let's go ahead and graph number 20. It's a 135-degree angle, which is in quadrant number 2. So that's my 135-degree angle right there. So the reference angle is the one formed at the x-axis that's less than 90. So we take 180, subtract 135, and you get a 45, 45, 90. Make sure you know the 45, 45, 90. A lot of you use the same pattern for the 30, 60, 90 as were the 45, 45, 90. This is the pattern for 45, 45, 90. 1, 1, radical 2. So the sides opposite the 45-degree angles are 1. That would be a positive 1 because that's your vertical coordinate, and y is positive in that quadrant. This would be a negative 1 because it's opposite the other 45-degree angle up here, and that's your horizontal coordinate, and x is negative in that quadrant. And the radius is radical 2. So again, for this problem, list your x, list your y, list your r. The rest should be really easy after that. Go ahead and pause it. If you want to go ahead and figure out the answers from there, I'll show you here in just a moment. All right, so there's your answers. Again, make sure you have the signs right. A lot of you for these two are putting radical 2 over 1. Anything divided by 1 is just itself, so those two can be simplified a little bit further. Again, check your answers, make sure you're on the right track. All right, 21, go ahead and change that one to a degree first, and then do it just like 19 and 20. So 300 degrees, that should convert to 300. Drew it in the coordinate plane, but to find the reference angle, it's the angle formed with the x-axis. So this is the angle we're looking for. That's just 360 minus 300. So that's a 60-degree angle we're looking at. So again, this is the 30, 60, 1 vertical 3, 2. So the 1 goes here, it's opposite the 30-degree angle, it's positive. The radical 3 goes opposite the 60-degree angle, it's negative. So that's your vertical coordinate is negative in that quadrant. And the radius is 2. So x is 1.